Welcome to our Friday afternoon industry event for Athlete Soul. I'm Miriam Glaze, I'm the founder of Athlete Soul, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown of the event today, and then I'll pass it on to Evan Burke, who is our program director here at Athlete Soul. So for this afternoon event, we have 4 guests, our former athletes, and they will speak to you about their experiences and insight within the sport industry. And before we get started on their question and their testimonies, I wanted to make sure that you understand this webinar is being recorded. You will be receiving a copy of the webinar and it will be available on our website as well. Everybody is muted during this event, so if you would like to ask a question, you're welcome to do so. You can either do that into the chat box or the question and answer that's located at the bottom of your screen. And without due notice, now I'm passing it on to Evan for our interview session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miriam. Really excited about this today. And Monica, we're going to start with you. So for everybody in attendance, Monica LeBron was a softball player at Yale University. She also got her MBA from Ohio University and recently got her PhD from Tulane. So congratulations on that, Monica. She has a very varied career in terms of college athletics. So she's worked at the University of Florida, Cal Berkeley, Ole Miss, Georgia, and now she has the role of Deputy Athletics Director with Tulane University. So Monica, welcome.
Thank you.
So the first thing that I want to know, in your role as Deputy Athletics Director, you have this position where you are touching multiple facets of the athletic department every single day. And just give our audience just a taste of what that looks like for you day to day.
Yeah, so my whole career had been in development and fundraising, and this was my first stint with internal operations as well. And I think what I love most about working at Tulane and being the Deputy AD COO is that I get to do everything. So I'm the number 2 in our department, and I oversee all day-to-day operations. I oversee the entire external side of the house, but I also oversee 4 of our sports. And so I literally get to do everything all the time, which is great. And it's a smaller department, so we have to be all hands on deck. But I think what I'm loving is the interaction with the student athletes. Ultimately, that's why I got into this industry of wanting to be an athletic director. I wanted to create the best experience possible for student athletes the way the administrators at Yale did for me. And when you're working in development and fundraising, you're constantly outward facing. So you're working for the student athletes and on behalf of them, but you don't get to interact with them. And so serving in this role and serving as a sports supervisor, I get to work every single day interacting with our student athletes, trying to figure out what they want for the rest of their lives and trying to help them get there. And then I get to interact with our coaches and trying to help them be successful. So I love the variety that comes with this chair.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, just from my own experience, being on a college, being in that college environment and being on a college campus, there's just a certain type of energy that's associated with that. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, so Monica, you've lived in 8 cities. Did I read that correctly?
Yes. Louisiana is my 8th state. And that's if I don't count the 2 summer internships, so that would make 10. But yeah, I've moved around a lot, and young people ask me all the time, if you want to be an AD, do you have to move? I remind them that you don't have to do anything. You need to be true to yourself. And so if you don't want to move, don't move. I was willing to move. I was willing to be far away from my family. I grew up in San Jose, California, and I was willing to be far away from them. But if you know you want to be close to your parents or close to nieces and nephews, then don't move. Because if you take a job just because you have to, you're going to be miserable in it, and you're probably not going to be very good at it because you're miserable. So I think you need to be true to who you are and what matters to you. I want to be an athletic director. I was willing to move. And so I always looked for that next best opportunity. And I've been really happy in each of my roles. So when you're that happy, you can be extremely selective in the next role. So that's what's allowed me to move. And like I said, New Orleans and Tulane has been, it's changed my life, and it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I've loved every second of it.
Yeah, you're certainly in one of the best places to live in the United States. I would make that argument for sure. Very cool. And you talked about kind of this path that you're on. And so just wanted to highlight for everybody, you know, when you are in college athletics, like Monica said, you don't have to move, but a lot of times those opportunities are afforded to you, not oftentimes at the university that you're at, but it's at another college. And oftentimes that's going to be not only in another state, but probably all on the other side of the country. So I was just curious, as you kind of got on this path of becoming an athletic director, did you know from very early on that you wanted to be an athletic director, or was it something that evolved over time?
So I got to Yale in 1997 as an 18-year-old, and I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had no idea what I wanted to study. It seems like kids go to Yale and they know exactly what they want to do and when they want to do it. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an investment banker. It's usually one of those three, and none of those appealed to me, and I really had no idea. But I was on financial aid going to Yale, and when you're on financial aid, you have to work an on-campus job, a work-study job. And so my coach, my softball coach, asked me if I wanted to work for the admin assistant of the AD. I said, I don't know what an AD does, but sure, sign me up. So I showed up first day freshman year and started working for the AD and his admin assistant. And by semester's end, I sat our AD down and said, okay, how do I become you? So I'm extremely lucky and blessed that it fell into my lap at such a young age. Like I said, I was 18 when I decided I wanted to be an AD, and I've been working towards it ever since. So I didn't know the day I got there, but a couple days into it, I knew that that was the path, and I've been working towards it.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so important, right? You're having these experiences and you're kind of discovering on your own that, hey, this is something I think I want to pursue. And I love something else that you said, that you went and sought that person out and sat them down and said, hey, I want to do this. What do you think I need to do? And really kind of understanding those next steps. So I love that. And I think it's great for people to hear that. And then when we're talking about, you know, you've had a very distinguished academic career. You obviously were a former athlete. Just talk a little bit about what skills you think you've transferred over from your academic and your athletic career into what you use every day right now.
Yeah, you know, I love to first, even before that, talk about my family. I was born into a team. So I'm the youngest of three girls, and right away I was being taught how to interact with the team, how to share the bathroom, how to support one another. So at such a young age, I was taught what it means to have your teammates back and be a good teammate. And then I went right into team sports at age 5 and never looked back. So I think first and foremost, you learn, like I said, how to be a great teammate. And because your teammates will let you know when you're being a bad one. So, and it's so important in a work setting to be a good teammate. We have to be pulling in the same direction, or it's blatantly obvious when we're not. And I think a lot of that I learned from, again, my sisters, my parents, but then also that team environment. And in addition to that, you learn how to work with very different types of personalities. So I think back to the car rides with my dad after a tournament. We'd be driving home back to San Jose from Lodi or Stockton all weekend. And we would talk for the whole hour and a half, 2 hours about, you know, how this person reacted to a strikeout, how this person reacted to committing an error, how I supported this person, how they supported me. And so I had no idea that those talks were teaching me how to interact with other humans. But then that's what we do every day in a work setting. And you have to be able to adjust to different personalities. And if you want to be a successful leader, you have to be able to adjust to what people need. Not everyone needs the same thing. And so you learn those different personalities and learn what they need so you can support them if you're going to be the leader.
Wow. Fantastic. I mean, that's just so great that you had a father that was kind of helping really develop you as a leader and as a teammate, even at those early ages. That's really cool. And I think just kind of wrapping up our portion right here, what advice would you give to some of the current athletes, or maybe somebody that had just retired that is maybe thinking about exploring working in collegiate athletics? What type of advice would you give them?
Like we talked about, go seek those people out. If there's an industry you want to work in, try and connect with as many people as possible in that industry. And then don't be afraid to volunteer. And not everyone can handle that financially. Not everyone's in a financially sound situation that they can just work for free. But don't let that be an excuse. So if you need to work a day job and then volunteer on the weekends, then do that. But try to get as much experience as possible. Sometimes you'll get paid, sometimes you won't, but you're building your resume and you're building your network so that you can succeed in that industry.
100%. Yes. You are the sum of your experiences, and the more experiences that you can get, whether it's paid or sometimes as a volunteer, I think that's just great advice and good for the athletes out there to understand that when you're trying to get into an ultra competitive environment like collegiate athletics, sometimes you gotta start from the bottom and volunteer. So really great advice, Monica. Thank you. Next, we're going to talk to Jenny Holden. Jenny is a former competitive Nordic skier. She competed at the University of Vermont and was a nationally ranked competitor. She then progressed to working with the U.S. ski team and helped plan the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympics, has worked with Bodie Miller and a number of other high-level Olympic athletes, and then went on to represent other Olympic athletes through different management and agency companies. So Jenny, welcome, and really excited to talk to you about kind of your one-on-one relationships and the sponsorship opportunities that you help athletes get through your management companies.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, so you've represented athletes for the last 20 years, and whether that's managing their off the competitive track opportunities or their competitive opportunities, just kind of help us understand, what does that look like for you day to day? Where is your daily focus when we're talking about managing athletes?
Really, as a sports agent and having developed my own business after working with bigger sports agency, it's cultivating relationships. I left a big sports agency and working with another agent because I realized it wasn't rocket science, and I wanted to work with athletes that I really enjoyed and I believed in and valued and respected and holistically. So I will be on the phone in the morning trying to make connections, talk to Olympic sponsors. I'll be looking at contracts, and having looked at so many, I will just help build them and educate the athletes what's in the contract, which I felt the athletes didn't get the support doing with a big agency. So helping develop the brand, talking to them about what they want to do next in their lives, and trying to align them with endorsement deals or partners that they can continue hopefully after the Olympics.
And are you helping kind of connect the sponsors with the athlete, or are you more talking about the strategy involved, or is it all encompassing?
It's all encompassing, but really the biggest and most important part, especially when you're coming up on an Olympic year, is connecting actually with the USOPC and knowing the people there, and having had the experience and being involved with them for years. It's just that constant connection, and they're connected to the other creative agencies, and just putting my athletes out in front of them. So when they're coming around to look at athletes, they go, oh, okay, this person's here. So just constantly getting the athletes out in front of sponsors and partnerships.
And you talked about working with some of the bigger agencies out there, but kind of wanting to do it your own way. Do you think for other people out there, do you think it's possible to go directly into kind of having your own management company? Or do you think that that experience at a bigger management company really served you well for the work that you do now?
Well, for me personally, I'm always a believer in, when I go into something new, just humility, checking my ego at the door and knowing that I don't know a lot. And so I personally think that it's really important. And so that's how I went into it. I shadowed an agent and did it on my own, and learned a lot. And I think that's super important.
And, we're talking about like sponsorship opportunities, and this could be for any opportunity that is involved with the what you're connecting the athletes with. But just give us an idea, like how long do some of these opportunities take? How many conversations are we talking about? Is it like a couple of weeks? Is it a couple of months? And I'm sure they're all different, but is there any way you can give us kind of like just an indication of how long these opportunities take to come to fruition?
Absolutely. So, I can only speak to Olympic sponsorships because the professional world is very different, in a different professional world. So as soon as the Summer Olympics is done, you're actually starting to talk about your Winter Olympics at the Summer Olympics with sponsors. And it starts from there. And I have found that it almost takes 3 years often to get activation. So you're really only successful if you just keep on the forefront. And this is where communication and relationship, which I always felt was one of my strengths, is super important, because there's so many other athletes that you're competing with. And oftentimes it gets down to what agents they like, and who's the easiest to work with. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You said you started off by talking about how important the relationships are. And so it would just stand to reason that the communication aspect and your one-on-one relationships with those athletes is going to be vitally important. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that something that you really love about your job? Or is there anything else that comes to mind when you're really thinking about like why you love to do this type of work?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, I left working with when I was working in a bigger sports agency because I just felt that it was they were commodities, and that's it. And rightfully so, if that's where you want to be. But having a passion for leveraging athletes to do something positive and give back, that's ultimately why I ended up going this direction, because it was embracing the whole athlete and helping them understand their passions and brands. So when they're done, they can really have more to stand on.
Yeah, and I mean, I love it. We're talking about relationships and communication, obviously vital in any industry or any job that you have. But I'm curious, from your competitive background and your background as an athlete, what skills do you feel like you utilize day to day in your current position now?
Well, unlike Monica, I'm not a team player. No, I mean,
I appreciate your honesty.
I would much rather spend 10 hours in the woods by myself, but that has provided the ability for me to be confident in myself to go out on my own. I think that time that I spent with personal goals as an athlete, knowing I'm going to fail, knowing that I'm going to take risks, that really gave me the strength to move forward in this direction.
Yeah, I love that. And that's just something to always kind of be reminded of, is that we've all gone through challenges as athletes in our past. And when we do hit those rough times, oftentimes we don't look at kind of like our own personal history and understand that we've been through things that are just as hard as what we're experiencing now. And, you know, to kind of bring light to our certain situation, like this too shall pass. And we've been through difficult situations before. So I love that you said that. And I think the ability to respond to adversity and that grit is one of the great things about being an athlete and then kind of becoming a professional after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we're going to talk to Meg Stewart. Meg is from Dallas. Whoop, whoop. I'm from Dallas as well. So she was a Division I soccer player. She started her career at University of San Diego and then transferred to Southern Methodist University, Pony Up, where she competed her last 3 years as a Division I athlete. And then got a study in broad program through USC, where she entered through the USC Film School, where she was working with some of the major players in the film industry out here in Los Angeles. She then took that experience and transferred that over into her work with agencies and management companies, primarily focused on business development and developing off the field opportunities for the athletes that she's working with. So definitely a varied resume in terms of your work already, Meg. And I'm just curious, you know, talking about the off the field in business development, specifically finding those opportunities for athletes, just describe for us a little bit, kind of like, what does that look like? Is that the main aspect of your role? And just help us understand your day to day.
So I'll start by when I was at CAA. So my current role makes a little bit more sense to everyone. So I obviously worked in CAA. I already said it's one of the largest sports agencies, if not the largest in the world. And we decided, there was a guy who was running it, was also a Division I athlete. And he built this group that basically the whole point of it was a lot of the deals for these players off the field come in the form of like an endorsement or a marketing deal, strictly like you're promoting somebody else's company or somebody else's product. And we saw the value in, okay, like you are Cristiano Ronaldo, you yourself are a brand. Like, why not like go build like a CR7, or you look at LeBron James, like you can go build uninterrupted. Like you yourself can go own a company. You don't have to always endorse somebody else's. So we built this group that basically that was the whole point. And we would look for opportunities for some of our biggest athlete clients, like the Cristiano Ronaldo's, like the JJ Watts, like the CP3s, and say, okay, like, what are you interested in? Are you interested in cat food? Like it could be anything. Like we would get off the wall requests and we would help them go out and raise that capital and find the right partners and then build that company. It could be a media company, a food company, apparel, like you name it. It was just finding about really what they were interested in and something that they could own that was theirs. And also, alongside that, like one of our biggest clients was the NFLPA, and they wanted to build a production company within the union that is the PA to help with their athletes do more content, because there's a lot of bylaws that the players have to abide by in order to do a lot of content. And so we helped them build a company that made that easier. So it kind of came in different forms and entirely depended on who the client was, what sport they played. I think Jenny said it earlier, like, every sport kind of looks different. For a basketball player, the rules are completely different than a football player. They're interested in different things most of the time. So when I left CAA, I had become good friends with Travis Kelce, who, super, if anyone's a Chiefs fan on here.
Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, Super Bowl champion. And his managers were doing really cool stuff. I thought they were one of the few people that I knew that were doing actual management. Meaning, like, to me and most people, like especially in the entertainment space, like, there's a difference between a management company and agency. Agencies are working on team contracts. Management companies aren't doing any of that. It's sort of like a Scooter Braun versus a CAA. If you know who Scooter Braun is, he's Justin Bieber's manager. Like, he's doing all the other stuff that's not, the contracts or the touring, sort of the same for athletes. So they were doing management stuff, and I found it really interesting. And they had a handful of clients alongside Travis. And so I left CAA and went to go work with them. Day to day, everything looks different. And I'll answer one of your questions, by the way. Like, sometimes a deal can take 24 hours. Like for Super Bowl, we'll close a deal in 24 hours. Sometimes it'll take a year and a half. Like it just entirely depends on what it is and what they want to do. if we're building a company or investing in something versus like Travis did a Microsoft deal for Xbox, you know, like over Super Bowl, like we closed that in less than 24 hours. So it just entirely depends on what it is.
Wow. Yeah. And you mentioned kind of building out these companies for these athletes, or at least helping them identify some of these opportunities. Was it specifically helping them ID the opportunities and like developing that strategy? Or were you like on the ground saying like, okay, well, this needs to look like, you know, this needs to have this corporation status and we need to hire somebody to do A, B, and C for the company? Like, what was your role in all of that as you developed the companies for these athletes?
The annoying answer is it kind of depends on what the company was. It really does. Like, we built a company for Coach K when I was at CAA, and that was everything from us helping find, like, literally raising the capital to going out and hiring the CEO. And then we became basically consultants to the company. So we never really, and same with the NFLPA, the production company we built for the NFLPA, and never really, we helped find the CEO. We helped find a lot of the like C-suite execs for it. And we never really disappeared out of it. Like, we kind of stayed and helped, like, you know, we kind of acted as consultants or like, you know, managers to that business. And for athletes, it was kind of all over the map, because with athletes, I'm sure everyone knows, like, it's very common for, you know, a football player to have their brother or their best friend from home or their dad that wants to be involved in this company. And we see that a lot now with charities. Like, if you look at a lot of NFL players or NBA players, the person running their charity, like the chairman of their foundation, is their mother or their sister or their wife. And so for us, it's a lot of working alongside those people and helping them learn how to run the business, because in most cases, they haven't done anything like that before. So we're trying to, you know, without stepping on toes, trying to help them realize, you know, how it's done. So
Yeah.
it just depends on depends on the scenario.
Right. It's like probably be prepared to roll your sleeves up and jump into any facet of the business. And you know, you've had this career where obviously you're a former athlete, but then you also had this experience in television and film and kind of working with some of those production companies, and then now in this kind of athlete management space. Just kind of talk about some of the skills that you use day to day that maybe translate from all these different experiences to what you're doing now.
You know, it's funny. Yesterday, I had somebody say something really interesting to me that kind of clicked. Everything in sports is content. Like, basically, the sports industry is content. And if you look at it from that lens, you kind of see it in a different light, at least for me. Like, it is content. Like, sure, there's a lot of aspects, like, personally for the players, but for everyone else, like, the sports industry is a content industry, right? Like, you're turning on ESPN, you're watching the Super Bowl, you're watching Fox Sports. Like, it's a content business. You're watching the Olympics. You know, it's all content. And so for me, having a good understanding of production and what that looks like and what people on that side of the table are looking for, it's kind of helped me realize, like I mentioned Travis, I'll just use him as an example. Like, the guy did a dating show called Catching Kelce. And if you haven't seen it, it's a real treat. And since we're in quarantine, I highly recommend just maybe watching an episode or two, because it's different.
Wait, a dating show for him, or like that he's hosting?
No, he's in it. He like it was when he was single. So like he's
okay.
It's The Bachelor, but with Travis as the guy. It's definitely entertaining. Highly recommend. But right after Tiger King, put that on your list. But no, I think being able to look at things through a production lens and having an idea of what those people that are running that side of it think is valuable. Just so you have a better idea of like how to monetize your player in the proper way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, that's why people want to work with former athletes, a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is because they know how to set a goal and they know how to set a path to getting to that goal. So I love what you said there. And just kind of wrapping up just about your path, you know, here you are now, you're working with obviously Travis Kelce. I would think in terms of NFL football players, if you wanted to work with somebody, he's got to be at the top of the list, because he's not only a really good player, but he has like a really good good personality, and just kind of talk about, like, was this something that you always wanted to do, or did you kind of like, was this just a path that you got on where everything was kind of evolving as you were having your experiences?
It sort of evolved. I got really lucky early on in my career to work for a guy named Peter Guber, who I interned for. He used to be the chairman of Sony Studios, and now he owns the Golden State. He's a co-owner of the Golden State Warriors, the Dodgers, LAFC. And when I worked for him, he had a couple minor league baseball teams too. He had a production company after he left Sony that I went to go work for. And then somehow I ended up I became his intern, and then he ended up hiring me when I graduated. And that's where I got my first look into sports. And it was interesting because I was sort of right at the intersection of sports and entertainment, which was perfect for me because I was a film school kid who was an athlete. And then I went back into production once I left his company, and I sort of missed sports. Once I got a taste of it on the business side, I was like, well, crap, like I want to go back and do something more similar to that. And I kind of I had already worked for so many like great production companies, and I kind of kept missing something, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? So I sat down. I think everyone has pretty much said it so far, but go talk to whoever you can is like my biggest advice, because that's what I did. And they were all like, go to an agency, go get that experience, go to an agency, you get a bird's eye view of everything, and you'll figure it out there. And then when I got there, I ended up working for this guy who was a D1 athlete, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. And then I just kind of fell into sports and just kept going and didn't really look back.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, you are the sum of your experiences. And that's why I was asking Jenny specifically, like, is going to be part of one of these big agencies like a necessity? And I don't think it has to be, but it does kind of provide you with that balcony view, so to speak, of kind of like having the ability to take a look at everything and kind of almost being able to choose specifically what it is you want to pursue. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing, Meg. So David, we're going to move on to you. And so David Sigal is joining us. David played baseball at UC San Diego. And right after his baseball career was over, he actually ended up getting an internship, I believe, with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Right out of college, and was fortunate enough to stay on there for 22 years, eventually becoming one of the executives with the ball club, and most recently is now the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Sports Council, and part of the Southern California Committee for bringing the Olympic Games here to Los Angeles here in 2028. David, thank you so much for joining us. And, I think I just want to kind of highlight, for everybody, we talked about collegiate athletics with Monica and having to move around a bunch. Just so everybody knows, the ability to stay at one place for 5 years is a tremendous accomplishment. So to be able to stay someplace for 22 years had to be just like a really special experience for you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. And as an Angelino born and raised, I went to Santa Monica High School. So to be able, I played baseball in college, so to be able to work for the hometown team, it's funny, and survive 4 ownership changes during that time, to see everything from bankruptcy to World Series, 2 of them, and everything in between. And one of the greatest things, I don't need to tell probably anyone on this call, you learn more about yourself under times of duress, not when you're going to World Series year after year, and so kind of ups and downs of the ownership changes and bankruptcy and everything. I learned so much over that time. So it was a real special experience. I will always be a Dodger. I will always bleed blue. So.
Yeah. So cool. And just so everybody knows, I mean, like, that is not just kind of like, oh, well, David's in this role, and so, we're going to keep him there. A lot of times when these ownership changes are happening, or when these organizations are experiencing adversity, they're looking at everything, and they're very quick to make changes. So just curious, from your experience, like, what do you think kind of allowed you to have such a long career, specifically with one team? Was there any one thing that you think kind of like helped keep you on during those moments of adversity?
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, never saying no. I think, and you realize there's not one right way to run a business. Just because it's been run one way for literally 60 years doesn't mean a different lens can't be put on and have it be just as good or actually even better. And so that's one thing. Every ownership group that I work for, whether it was the O'Malley's or the McCourts or Guggenheim or News Corp, they all had different kind of means to an end on why they bought the team and what that property meant for them. And so just really interesting to realize there's different ways to skin that cat. And just because you've done it one way successfully, I think you really have to be open to evolving, and learning and growing. And that's one thing, I think I had a pretty unique path because, I started as a marketing intern, and when my internship was coming to an end, they offered me a 3-month gig selling season tickets. I mean, it was literally hired January 1st, fired opening day. And I said, well, shoot, if I could stick around for 3 more months and get paid, that's better than I was doing the 8 months before working for free. Back then you could work for free. Apparently that's frowned upon these days. But I just kept saying yes to whatever opportunity came my way. I didn't ask, well, what does this mean for me? What's my title going to be? How much am I going to make? I just kept saying yes. And a perfect example of that was I had kind of flattened out on my early on in my ticket sales career and done it all, been really successful, and actually took a pay cut to work in the marketing department, which was really interesting to me to see kind of the other side of it. Because it's one thing to be on the front lines and selling something you're passionate for. I was lucky enough to do that. But also seeing the other side of it. And that's what kind of I tell people is, I think getting into sales, and we all have some element of sales, whether you're selling an athlete or a university or anything in between, you're always selling yourself. And I tell people that you're going to be so much better of an executive if you understand the core business. And the core business is selling tickets for a sports organization. And so how much of a better marketer, PR person, finance, accounting, community affairs are you going to be if you understand the core business? So my path at the Dodgers and throughout my career has kind of followed a revenue generating area. And I always feel like your career tends to fall towards your strengths. You know what I mean? And so a good example is I was in the marketing department, and the team had been sold to News Corp, who had decided to build suites, and Dodger Stadium had never had luxury seating before. And I'll never forget opening day, I got called into our president's office, and I had been there for, 5 or 6 years at the time, so not very long. And she said, we need some help selling suites. Will you sell it? And I said, yes. I didn't ask, well, what does that mean for me? How much am I going to make? And I was doing my marketing duties during the day and literally selling suites out of a phone book in the afternoon, and I was fortunate enough at the end of that year, I was kind of given the ball to run and build the premium seating department of the Dodgers, and my career really took off after that. But I tell everyone that's ever worked for me and with me, never say no. You never know what doors a new opportunity is going to open for you.
Totally. I love hearing this because you're right. Like, just because you get an opportunity to maybe do something that you aren't familiar with, or maybe it's lower pay, doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it. And so I think just understanding that, look, you don't just stay somewhere for 22 years, especially at the highest levels of sport. Nothing is guaranteed at those levels. And I think what you said perfectly encapsulates that. You were open to new opportunities. You didn't really ask what was in it for you, but they knew in that building that if they came to you with something, that you were able to handle it. And even if you didn't quite know what you were doing, you were willing to put in the work to make that be successful. So I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
And we've talked about this before, in terms of like casting a wide net. So kind of talk about that a little bit, because you've had your hand in a couple of different facets of the sports industry, specifically with the Dodgers and now what you're doing currently. So just kind of talk about like the ability for people out there to be open to those opportunities like you spoke about, and just the ability to cast a wide net when they're thinking about the potential job opportunities out there for the sports industry?
Sure. I mean, I think so often people get caught when you say you want to work in sports, you immediately think of the professional teams in your city. And depending on what city you're in, this isn't like working for a bank where there's literally 15 banks down the street. There may be a handful of professional teams in that city. And what I've realized is there's so many different avenues into the sports industry. I mean, a perfect example I give is, when I was vice president of global partnerships with the Dodgers, every single one of those signs in the outfield wall, every single one of those companies has got a marketing department. So that's a perfect way to get it. Our broadcast and TV partners, they're selling Dodger assets. They're selling team assets. It's really no different than working in sponsorships with the club. They're using those exact same assets that we're selling. And so I think to get people to flip the script a little bit and realize you don't have to be linear. It doesn't need to be working in sports, doesn't need to be working for a team. I mean, a perfect example is all the great personalities we've got on this call right now. It's not a linear road, whether it's Monica living in 15 different cities, or me. I don't know if I'm smart or stupid working for the same team for 22 years. It's still to be determined. But, I think there's a lot of different ways to go. And it's just, you have to be really smart, because if you just think success for me is working in sports is working for a professional team or even a college team, I think you're going to really be handcuffing yourself. So I would challenge everyone to look at different ways. There's so many avenues. I mean, from Meg talking about the production side of things and everything else, so many different avenues into the sports industry. So
yeah, and maybe just share with us a little bit about your new role as president and CEO of the LA Sports Council. Kind of what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Obviously, you're not dealing with a professional team anymore, but you're more dealing, with an entire city. So just kind of talk about, what your role is currently and kind of like what some of your day-to-day activities look like.
Yeah, I mean, when this opportunity crossed my plate, I mean, I jumped on it because I really felt like I was buying low. I mean, you look at what's going on in Los Angeles over the next 8 years, whether it's college football championships and Super Bowls and all-star games, maybe this year. And oh, by the way, the Olympics and new stadiums being built, to me, this is the culmination, and you don't get too many opportunities to write a version 2.0 narrative for a legacy organization. This organization, LA Sports Council, was birthed after the Olympic movement here in '84. So now I don't just get to work with the Dodgers. I get to work with every professional team in LA, collegiate team in LA, amateur team in LA, and I get to sell the city that I love. So I'm still working through exactly our lane and really defining and updating our narrative. But to me, to get to build something, I was able to use a lot of my entrepreneurial spirit at the Dodgers and relying on a monster brand that everyone knows. This is kind of the other side of the coin where I really get to build something here, and I get to build in what I think is the best city in America, in the world, and really, again, like I said, get to create a new narrative for who we are and what we're doing and how we support spectator sports and bring economic impact to Los Angeles. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So cool too, because it's almost like it's taking everything that you had done at the Dodgers and all these different pieces of the organization that you had those experiences in, and now you're getting to roll all of that into this role now. So really, really cool. And David, thank you for sharing. And with that, I want to pass it over to Miriam and just for the question and answer portion and any type of follow-up questions. So thank you all.
Thanks, Evan. So yes, we're going to start with our questions. Once again, you can submit the question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I have a few questions myself, so I'm going to get started straight away. And if one of you want to jump in, the first one to go probably will be the one answering. But basically, you talked a lot about building relationship and networking to get into the sport industry and how important it is. to be in your business. So my question to you, since we're talking to current and former athletes who want to be in this industry, how can they, what's their advantage? How can they take advantage of being athlete going into the sport industry? It seems that that should be their point of differentiation. And so I'm curious on how could they highlight that, and how would that be a difference for them?
I mean, I'll just jump in real quick and just say, out of the gate, to be able to differentiate yourself within the framework of a team, I think is so key. And it's, I think, something that we've all kind of touched on throughout, but being able to set yourself apart, but also work in that framework of a team and elevate everyone around you. I think if a former athlete really keys in on that and how they're going to do such a great job, but also elevate everyone around them, I think that's a huge selling point.
I can add too, because I thought it was really important. Athletes like helping other athletes. So like I got my job at CAA because the guy who was running the department was a Yale soccer player. And he loved that I was a soccer player, and then he became my mentor, and that's how it happened. So if it's not on your resume, put it on your resume that you were a Division I athlete, or division doesn't even matter. Put the school, put the sport, and like make sure it's there, and then seek out other athletes. Like if you know somebody, you know, that's an alumni of your school or played your sport or whatever, and they're in an area of interest for you, like go find that person. Because it's like if anybody emailed me, you know, with that intention, like I'm more than happy to talk to them and help, because we like helping each other, because it's just a sense of camaraderie and like a team. Goes back to the team mentality that Monica was talking about. But that's just something that's been important for me.
I would add, don't be shy. And that's really easy for me to say because I'm not shy. So if you are shy, try not to be. And I talk to our student athletes all the time. Come talk to me. Come see me. I want to help you. I talk to the young people in the department. Come see me. Come talk to me. I want to help you. I'm constantly getting emails and phone calls from folks outside of our department, and I help everyone. I've never said no to anyone who's asked for my help ever. And so sometimes I even get frustrated that the folks right in my own family are not seeking my advice and not asking for help, because I want to give it away. So do not be shy. And if you are shy, just try to find the courage, because more often than not, someone is not going to say no. And if they are, there's someone else out there that will say yes.
Yeah, that's great. And on that topic, I think you're bringing up my next question that I had for you guys, because you spoke about some qualities that athletes have that directly transfer into your business, whether it's teamwork or hard work, resiliency. But I was curious as to, is there a specific type of personality that you see in your jobs in the sport industry? Today, it seems that you guys are all very outgoing and passionate about what you're doing, and a little bit of a salesman in each one of you. And so I'm just curious, these are like the common personality elements that we've seen so far, but do you have any other that we may have not thought about or discussed yet that you think are important in that work?
I can add to that. First, I do want to say I am a team player with the right team. It was, I just have to find the right team. No, I mean, I think the self-drive, you know, the ability to be proactive. I mean, you have to be a successful athlete. The time management, the organization, I mean, that's a no-brainer, are huge and super important.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I think just speaking from my personal experience, but like not everyone can sit in a room with an NFL player and like have a productive conversation. It's a different type of personality. So I know guys that work on the off the field side that are able to sit with an athlete and sort of speak their language, for lack of a better way to explain it. Like, you don't have to be loud and outgoing all the time. You don't have to be this like crazy character that I am, or like, you know, that Monica seems to be like being that way. Like, you know, like you can be like a calmer, chiller guy who like played football at Iowa State, but like we can put you in a room with like an Odell Beckham Jr. and you can like talk to him and like he respects you. So it, you know, you can be like the, you know, the human side of it too. It doesn't always have to be the business sales side. Like at least if you're working directly with athletes, like that's valuable, is just like knowing your audience, knowing how to deal with people. But that's just something that I've come across like in my personal experience.
The other thing I would add, I constantly talk about these two words, reliability and dependability. And I feel like David touched on that too. You know, he was always willing to say yes. If someone came to him, he was reliable and dependable and he got it done. And at the end of the day, I think I constantly think about the day I get in the chair, the AD chair, and I want to bring people with me because it's easier to hire someone you know than to hire someone you don't. And so who was reliable and who was dependable and who can I count on and not have to think that they're going to get this job done. And so if you can be reliable and dependable in the job that you have in front of you, people will notice that and they'll want you on their team. So reliability and dependability are huge for me.
Yeah, can I just say one thing to that? And to realize it's a small community. So you never know what jobs people are going to have. So if you don't work well with someone, that could come back and kind of bite you. You never really know. And I'm sure we all have stories of people that ascended to great heights that we're all surprised at, you know what I mean? So that's another thing just to be careful of.
Absolutely. And so on the knot and sort of on a wrapping question for all of you, I would like to hear your top recommendation for those athletes who are trying to get into this industry right now. Obviously, everything is out of the normal and there's a lot going on and it might scare some people to get started. You mentioned not being shy, building relationship. There's not one path, there's not one way to do things. In addition to all of these advice that you've provided us today, is there one other recommendation that you have for someone who wants to get into the industry now? They've just graduated.
I'll say, just because I think it's insanely important, and like I look back on, you know, young me, and I wish somebody would have said this to me like tenfold. Everyone likes talking about themselves, just like we're just like built that way. Like everyone enjoys telling their story. So get somebody on the phone and just ask questions or reach out to them. Like, don't be afraid to send them a note on LinkedIn or send them an email if you have it. And just say, hey, like, I think your job path is really interesting. And, you know, and I know you're a former athlete, so am I. I'm coming out of college. Like, do you mind just like telling me your story? And you never know, like that person can become your mentor. And like, sort of like David said, like you never really know where people are going to end up or where they can help you. So like, even if you don't see immediate value in knowing that person, like it can, I mean, the odds of them coming back around at some point and helping you get a job or helping you along the way in your career is almost 100%. So just go talk to whoever you can and just get to know them, because there's no harm in that. And you're not annoying them. I'll tell you right now, like everyone likes talking about themselves. So just know that and don't be afraid to go talk to people.
Yeah. And just to kind of draft off of that, Meg, I mean, and I think maintaining those relationships is a skill in itself, because it's one thing to be able to have a conversation, connect with someone one time. It's another thing to kind of keep them at arm's length, I like to call it. You don't want to smother someone, and you don't want them only to hear from you when you need something from them. But if you see an article in one of the trade magazines that affects their business, hey, saw this, I'm sure you saw it too, but thought of you, let me know how things are. Sometimes that's all it takes, you know what I mean? And so it's like this real comfortable, again, at arm's length, but not only making that first step and that connection, which is the hardest, but I think it's just as difficult and just as much of a skill to kind of maintain that. So when they do come around and they can help you, it's not like you're just hitting them up because they can help you. You know, you have that constant dialogue.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Anybody? Monica? Yep.
Yeah, I would just add again, if you're an athlete right now, who are you surrounded by? So who's in your organization? Who's at your university, who's on your team. Those are the people right now that you have access to. So utilize them. And more often than not, when you sit down with them, they're going to say, oh, I need you to call my buddy so-and-so, or I need you to connect you with this person. And it's a mushroom effect. It just happens. And so I just think that if you're playing a sport right now, or if you played a sport, you already have a network that you need to go back and think about and start with them because they know you. And then I promise you, they're going to give you 2 more names and someone else is going to give you 3 more names, and it's just going to grow from there.
Did you just say mushroom effect? Did I hear that correctly? I love that. I've never heard that term, but that's awesome. Sorry. Just thought I wanted to make sure I got that right.
Perfect. Well, on the mushroom effect note, we're going to be wrapping up, but I wanted to also sort of put you all on the spot. You've all said, reach out and build those relationships. Are you guys happy and willing to be contacted as well by our participant today?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Really great event today, and really thank you for taking the time to share your story and provide some insight and advice for all the athletes. So we appreciate very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Good job, Evan.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.